Come with me as I talk you through my last year, which was effectively a depression session. Stress, undermining of my own confidence. I had worked really hard for that point, qualified for 2 games, was working full time, and I decided to step away from work in order to focus on Paris. And then 2025, I decided I was going to look for a new job. I was naive in thinking I could swan into another job. I am a Paralympian and I had just gone to another games and I should be extremely employable, which I fundamentally believe for both Olympians and Paralympians that should write your ticket into a company. However, experience is very different, I would say, over the last year. It rocked my confidence a good bit. I mean, the reality of that. I'm clearly don't feel entitled to that, although it sounds like I am, but it just was something, when you're in the depths of depression, you kind of feel as though you've represented your country, and the least you could expect is that some company would value that experience, and matching that with the actual physical work experience and evidence on your CV, you could walk into another job quite easily. I really put a lot of pressure on myself. I felt like it was a direct reflection of who I was, and it meant that I wasn't good enough. And when you step away from a Paralympic Games and you have this void of emptiness, that vacuum gets filled with evidence that says that you're not good enough. I kept trying to upskill, did a lot of work professionally in order to try and crack some way in to a company. The first week of January this year, I really thought about, what was not serving me in 2025, because I need to course correct for 2026. I was putting far too much pressure on myself and sabotaging myself actually in environments because it was so important to me not to fail that I actually was not showing myself off to the best standards that I could. So I decided to go with the flow, that saying that I really hate, which is, what's for you won't pass you. I do think that's true. The reality of it is true. And then the other thing was to speak much more kindly to myself, talking really, really badly to myself in those moments when I needed to self-talk and hype myself up. When I made that decision and I took stock, I stopped, I applied for roles the beginning of the year. The very first role that I applied for offered me the job. The space of 3 weeks. I spent 52 weeks last year trying to will a job into existence, and it took 3 weeks. I've experienced this before. Things come along when it's the right time. You kind of have to just not rush that process. As someone who retired as an athlete, I personally believe it's our retired athletes' collective responsibility to say very honestly to people in our networks that are facing into retirement, this is my reality and you might face this, but you're not alone. I certainly said that in spaces where there are people in the same boat as me. In those moments before I found those tribes, I felt very alone and very sad a lot of the time. It's a shock to the system when you retire. I mean, I did my sport alongside many other things, but being a Paralympian, or maybe not even being a Paralympian, but being an athlete, it did make up a lot of my fabric. And even though it wasn't my, the main hat that I wore, it's a very big part of my life. And I was shocked how much of myself went into that. And so I can only imagine, as an athlete who's doing it full time and you step away, how shocking that is. As much to say, if this conversation helps one person out there to understand that things happen in their own time, when you think you're at your lowest, the world does shift quite drastically in ways that you didn't expect. Sometimes you do have to reframe, you do have to self-talk and say, I want the conversation to shift to be positive. I don't want my story to be negative anymore. So come on, universe, hit me. Give me what you got. Welcome in that good energy. It seems very dramatic and very immediate because I didn't talk about all of the awful experiences I had last year. It really feels like I did all the work, had everything covered, and I left it open to the universe to help me. And it did. So your girl's employed again. Yay!